In this episode, I sat down with producer and engineer Paul Willie Green Womack. He recently mixed the latest ELUCID album, I Told Bessie. Be sure to stick around because Paul and I dive into the session where he shares the techniques and tools that went into mixing this album. You can download the album on Bandcamp or stream it wherever you get your music.
So real quick, I want to actually show the original beat and then some of the stuff I did to it because I really like this beat, but it needed a little bit of help. Let's go back to the top. So again, this is produced by Seb Bash.
And it was delivered to you in a stereo format like this.
Stereo format, yeah. So when I say I got a lot of 2-track beats, that's what I mean is that whoever made the beat, they made it. They printed just 2-track, hopefully wave, and then that's it. And there are some producers like, no, that's the beat. Like, go ahead. And I'm like, yeah, but if you separated that, and if you had that, I'd have a lot more control. But you don't always get that control. And so a lot of what we do as mixing is also problem solving. How do we get the best out of this musically and keep it sounding natural and right for the song, but also get in there and do the shit that we need to do to make it right, right? So this is the beat, how it came in. So that's a dope beat, and I like the weird little vocal chop in there. I didn't listen. Like that kind of, that probably set up ELUCID a certain way to rhyme, certain way. Like I didn't listen. What didn't you, whatever. But I exist in a world of indie hip hop where we're not necessarily here to have everything be super clean and super crispy. And I toe that line where I like a clear mix. But I'm fine with the grime in there because that grime kind of lets you know what the real clear parts are because that contrast. But that's too much noise in the top end for me. It's too much noise in the top end. And then, as I mix, so as we're listening now, Cubase has what's called a listen bus. So we're listening just to the track, not through it going through my mix bus and through everything else I did downstream. So this is just the beat. But I'm going to take that, it's going to be compressed along the way, things are going to happen, and then it's going to be mastered. All that noise is going to come up and up and up. That noise flare is going to come up every time you squash the dynamics and then bring it up. That noise flare comes with it. And so I know off the jump, okay, I have to reduce some of this so it doesn't overwhelm when we get down there. But it's not as simple as saying, oh, well, let me just throw a low pass filter on that because the hi-hats are a big part of this groove, right? There's a lot going in there. So what I did,
and throwing a low pass filter on would, for those of you who aren't catching on, would take out everything, not just the noise.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the trick with these 2 tracks is that what you do to one thing, you do to everything. If you want to control the kick drum, you're also affecting the bass. If you want to pull the snare out a little bit, well, if there's a piano sample in there, you might have some piano notes that are in that same frequency range. So for a lot of stuff like this, if I just wanted to turn down these hi-hats, for instance, I will go to something like Eventide SplitEQ, and I would open that up, and I can use this to turn down the high transients, and I'm softening those hi-hats. Wow. Or if I need to pull those out. So that's pretty powerful. If I want, when you can really get in, if I want to. Let's see if I can find. Like that. Which I love that set. I want them boosting that to drive that a little more to get that in the mix a little more. So that all works great for that. But the noise reduction is a bigger challenge here. So because I can't just, yes, I can boost let me go back. I can boost the hi-hats or reduce the hi-hats. And you would think conversely, I can take the tonal side, which is the opposite of the transient side, and try to remove that. However, the noise is pretty full range on this song. It's not enough just to reduce the highs. You know, I could probably take that and I could probably get away with, yeah, you know, it's not taking all that up. But the thing with the noise is that the noise is killing my detail across the full frequency spectrum of the entire beat. Like, we hear the noise that's up top because there's more going on down in there, but you know, further down around 1K where like my snare crack is, there's noise there too. Like all the clarity through the whole frequency range is removed, right? So what I'm doing now to do a little more surgery to reduce this noise is I'm using Spectrallayers, which is very similar to Isotope RX. It's a spectral editor. But what I'm doing, what's really dope about Spectrallayers is I can split the signal. So this is a spectral representation of how this beat looks. Like if we go back to the top, this is, right here you see the waveform. This is just a different representation. Right, so the different intensity, it's vertically it's frequency, left to right is horizontal, but then the more intense the color, the louder the louder the signal at that point. So here, like it starts with the snare, click, boom, 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 cat, boom, boom, right? So cat, boom, 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 cat, boom, right? So you can see the kicks down here, you can see the snares, the hi-hats here, but for a pretty open beat, there's a whole lot of stuff in that in between, right? That's the noise. But what Spectralayers lets me do is I can go to unmix components, and similar to how SplitEQ was working, I won't say similar technology because I'm not a programmer and I'm sure they've done things differently. I don't want anyone thinking that it's the same exact process, but what Spectralayers is doing here is it's going to split the signal into three parts. The transient, the tonal part, but what Spectralayers can also do is noise. What doesn't fit cleanly into tonal or transient, but what does generally wind up being, you know, just hiss and that kind of stuff. But so here it's split up. So the tonal is in pink. So this is just the tonal information. Wow. Right. So it's just the transient, which alone kind of sounds like drums, but not really. But then we have also is the noise. So some of this is usable information, so I don't want to just mute all of that, because without the noise, it sounds like this. Now, it sounds like music, but that's not
what it was before minus the noise.
Exactly. There are artifacts there. If I send that back to Seb, she'd be like, you know, what did you do to my beat? All the stuff is out of there, but what I may want to do is I can maybe lower the noise a little bit, or maybe I want to EQ just the noise part and leave the rest. So what actually wound up happening, once I split these three things in Spectralayers, I can take them and drag them each separate part to a track. I split it out, and we have the tonal, the transient, and the noise aspects of the beat. So now I disabled the track with the original 2-track, but now I got a little more control. You know, this is an extreme process for a beat that was pretty noisy. If I just wanted to just control the hi-hat to bring a little more snare attack out or fix some boominess in the low mids, I would use like the split EQ and make it simpler. But now we've got the tonal. The transient. We got that noise. That's different than what we just heard. So I'm taking these 3 elements. This is what I'm mixing. So if we go over to our mixer, on our tonal side, I've got console 1, which is kind of where I start all of my mixes. It's a channel strip for those who aren't familiar. And I'll say off the top, I don't want to make this too much about what plugins I use, because the techniques that I use should translate, except for like super specific tools like Spectrallayers or SplitEQ. I'm a big believer in that a great mix engineer should be able to mix on any DAW with stock plugins and should be able to make a good mix, right? I have tons of stuff that I prefer, but if I'm only beholden to my tools to make a good mix, am I mixing it or are the tools mixing it? I need to be able to do that. Open up Pro Tools, which I rarely use. I'm a Cubase user. Use the DigiRack plugins, which are some pretty basic plugins. I should be able to do a good mix because I understand musically, you know, it has the normal stuff. It's got faders and pan pots. I can get my balance in, I can get my spacing in, I can do that, and then I can shape with whatever I have. I should be able to do that, but I'm comfier when I got all my tools, right? So I'm using Softube, the console one. This is my channel strip. I got a little bit of a high cut, cleaning out a little bit in that mid range, right? Like this is just tonal. So if I bypass the EQ. So I'm just doing a little bit of a dip here for clarity in the low mids, and also ELUCID very much is important to him that his voice is present and full and very full and warm, right? I'm leaving some space for his vocal to take those frequencies. I don't want to boost him there because that may make him sound muddy. But if the track is a little thinner there by comparison, he's going to feel more full, right? Mixing is all about contrast. If the beat is real loud, there's no way the vocal can feel real loud because the beat's using up all the loud, right? There's only so much headroom, so it's a puzzle piece. It's all a matter of interplay. This high filter. That whistly stuff, those whistle tones, I don't want that. Look at that, get it out of here. You know, just to ease that off a little bit.
I got rocks in my head, I didn't listen right. Rattling around, fuck what they said, now he won't miss the light.
So I'm gonna bypass the EQ for a second when he comes in, because I want to hear how that crowds his voice there.
I got rocks in my head, I didn't listen right. Rattling around, fuck what they said, now he won't miss the light. Shifting gears, more than aware, I feel my...
It's subtle, but ELUCID's the artist, he's like, yo, put my vocals right up front. Then along with that, a little multi-band distortion, because why not distort? What frequency is this at? So this is, oh yeah, okay, I know why I did this.
I got rocks.
So without, those muffled vocal samples in the back, I wanted to tear those a little bit. I want those to be a little bit distorted. They come in intermittently, so it's hard to... Here, let me see if I can go back to the first marker. Now, like that, I wanted those... See here, you can see... It's hard because it's a weird way to listen. they don't have that quite bite to them. They don't have that little bit of edge, and I wanted that edge because even though they're unintelligible vocals, that's kind of one of the key musical elements of the beat, right? If we just come back to the beat, if we just saw the instrumental, so you get drums, so it's kick, snare, snare's really a rim click, hi-hat, that's the main drum pattern, right? There's bass in there. There's that hit with the delay, so we got that. And then there's two sets of vocal samples. There's the clean one, I didn't listen, and then there's this muffled one. But to me, because apart from that hit and the bass, the only other harmonic content in the beat is that distorted, that muffled sample. I didn't listen, it comes in and out, but that's not, I don't consider that harmonic in that same way. So I wanted to really emphasize that part of the beat because that's where the music part is. A little bit of fuzz, a little bit of dirt on that vocal sample. So this is between 2.5K and like almost 800 hertz, just in that like mid range. I wanted to push that there. And then just a little multi-band compression, just a little bit of control on the bottom end, just to kind of get that to sit down in there right. So that's just on the tonal part. So let's get these drums in here. You know, we're hearing this still a little bit of artifact stuff from the noise reduction, but any noise reduction to the degree that we have to do on this song, you're gonna get part of that. And a lot of things, whether it's tune, anytime you're in the editing realm, tuning, noise reduction, time correction, any of that stuff, you're basically dealing with a threshold of, are these artifacts going to kill the music? Anytime you're editing, you're creating some kind of artifact. If you're slicing and like nudging a word, there's no audible artifacts, but you made a change. If you're using heavy vocal tuning, you're gonna eventually hear the artifacts if you had to tune something very dramatically, and the back and forth that we deal with is, all right, I can live with that, or this now sounds like ass and I had to do something else, right? And this sounds better once we get the noise back in because we haven't reintroduced the noise yet. So here, again, we're on console 1, taking a tiny little bit off that top, those hi-hats, and then a little bit of drive, a little bit of saturation on there because that's the kind of person I am. You know, if we take off that EQ, try to get a little... All right, so we're getting there. It's not perfect yet. I'm using Soothe, to start getting a little bit of that high stuff off of those hi-hats that we didn't like, you know. Here we're getting a little bit more of that kind of watery thing. So cutting that bit. And then because a little bit of saturation is not enough, we also need Decapitator. Just enough of that aggression because, you know, this is an aggressive song. You know what I mean? This is not a gentle ballad. That's not what we're here for. And then, to finish it off, let's bring in this noise. So now those artifacts aren't feeling so much that kind of watery thing because we're missing pieces. Those little things kind of connect to something else in the fabric of this 3-layer thing that we have here. But now we can actually address the noise as its own entity.
And it hasn't gone through all of these stages that the transients and tonal elements have gone
Right. So all we're doing with the noise is we're cutting out a lot of the bottom. Let's solo the noise for a second. So this is just that noise track. And I've got a high pass filter. So in that transient track, you could hear sometimes you would get a little bit of thumps coming through and that kind of thing. And I could spend a lot more time taking those out of the transient track and putting them in the tonal. I knew I was combining them back, so I wasn't as concerned about that. But what I don't want is just complete chaos with noise across the bottom. So, you know, we can do that, and then I'll turn off the EQ. So you could hear everywhere, just imagine all those, there was a tick from a hi-hat that we're not hearing that's like right before that, right? And so we're just hearing the breath coming off of that, and we know that the beat sounds weird if we take all of the noise out, which is why I did it this way. Because at first I just muted it, I put RX on it, and all kinds of stuff I went through, and I was like, this is what's working the best for me. That's the thing with audio, there's a zillion ways to do things. You might approach this problem in a completely different way and come up with a solution that sounds different or better or exactly the same, but effective. And that's dope. And that's the way that you would do it. This is the way that I happen to do it. I might do it a different way tomorrow, but that's the fun part about audio. There's a million ways to do it. What's the best way to do that thing today for this piece of art? That's the way to do it, you know? And so that's what gets me bugged out on the internet. People are like, here is how you mix a vocal. You use this plugin and this thing. It's like, yo, but I'm going to be working with a different vocalist. Maybe I don't have that plugin. Maybe I don't like that plugin. Am I all of a sudden not making good music? Nah, I'm gonna do my thing my way and just make it sound good to me. And if my artists like it and if they fans like it, I did it the right way, you know? So here, let's get that out of there a little bit. That's banging to me. And we've reduced now, just for demonstration purposes, let's bring you back. Original beats. Versus because all that noise in there, we could have put the record out with that noise in there. And indie rap fans would not have cared. They'd be like, yeah, that's just the texture in there. And it's probably true. Like, if there's samples, I don't take out record noise. You know, I know producers who add more record noise in if there wasn't enough in the sample. And there's part of that, and some of it's that texture. I just want to be able to have control over it. And I want to be able to decide, yeah, I like that noise, and we didn't take it all the way out. But we got to chill it out a little bit because at some point it's going to kill the definition of everything else around it.
It gets back to that space game that you were playing with the vocal.
Yeah.
Right? Now you can shape the noise and create space. And the punch comes through so much more.
Exactly.
Right?
Because it's not just this low-key wall of acoustic energy, of sound that is taking away from the clarity of everything else, right? It just by default existing there is filling in all of the little holes of clarity that we've created through combining the other instruments and everything. It's just this kind of blanket behind there. So nothing can sound as clear as it might because it's just this just in the background. And you won't necessarily notice it. You won't miss it, but if it comes back, if we were able to A/B this like on the record, people will be like, yo, Now all of a sudden there's all this noise, nothing feels as crispy, right? So just a little, and and taking a little bit out, it's not that much quieter, if
It's loud in here. I got rocks in my head, I didn't listen right. Rather than
like right now, I would put it right about there. I'm actually curious just to see. Shout out to Mixer History, Undo on Cubase. That's where I just put it right now. Pretty close. This is at minus 6.57. In the mix that went on the record, it was at minus 6.2.
Wow.
So today, I guess I'm feeling a little less noisy than I was when I mixed this on April 18th. I Told Bessie is out now. Wherever you stream your songs, it's going to be there. If you buy digital music, which you should, best place is Bandcamp. It's up on Bandcamp now, and if you want people to keep being able to make records that you like, it's good to make sure that they're getting the dose they can afford to do that. And streaming, as of yet, is not the answer for most indie artists in that way. So it'll be out on CD, it'll be out on cassette, it'll be out on vinyl. So stay tuned for the physical drops. But if you head over to Backwoods Studios, and that's Z at the end of both of those, because it's hip hop, so we got to spell it wrong. Backwoodsstudios.com. You can cop all that stuff there.